Thanks, Brookie, for having us over to your place today. We're going to be talking about accessible travel, and it's really exciting because you've invited us over with Carol to do your packing.
Thank you for coming over.
Brookie, what does accessible travel mean to you, and how do you plan for it when you organise a trip?
That's a really good question. What does accessible travel mean to me? Accessible travel means being afraid to speak up and say what my needs and wants are, not only to myself but to people that I'm dealing with within the travel world that maybe haven't dealt with a stroke survivor before or somebody with my needs. So that means speaking to the accommodation about making sure that I have a rolling shower and that my room in the hotel is accessible. It also means making sure that everyone that's involved in the whole process of me going away understands what I need. So that may mean having people at the airport assist me not only at the checkout but all the way through the airport process. It means making sure that my wheelchair for the airport is also going to be good enough to get me around New York, and if not, what does that mean? What steps do I need to take to ensure that I'll be able to get around New York safely?
Now, Carol, you're Brooke's NDIS service provider.
Yes, I am.
Do you have any advice to add to sort of accessible travel in your work, and what advice you'd provide?
So the advice I would provide would start with first asking a question to Brooke. So with Brooke, have you received any support from the airline in terms of information regarding your travel and accessibility in the plane?
So I hadn't until I called about a week ago, and I spent over an hour on the phone with them to get permission to take my aeroplane approved wheelchair with me.
Okay.
Because depending on what size the aeroplane is, depends on what size wheelchair they will accept.
Oh, okay. So they do check.
They do check.
Okay.
And you have to have special written permission from them.
How come it took you an hour to get that information? Is that just a case of what you need to consider, that when asking these questions you need to put a bit of time aside?
Yes, but it was more so because the people I'm speaking to don't live with these gadgets or these things that I use every day to assist me.
Yeah.
They don't know what it's like. So they can ask me what's the size of the wheelchair, and I'll go, oh, it's a manual wheelchair. But they don't care if it's manual or powered. Their question was, what size is it? So then I have to get out a tape measure and not only measure it, but then wait for them to go back to their seniors and get the okay that it's all right for that wheelchair to be loaded onto the plane, for example.
And are they checking any weight limits?
Not for the wheelchair, but they'll be checking my bag as they do with everyone.
Oh,
right.
It's good to know that they won't be checking the chairs.
Yes, and I've got permission for the wheelchair. The other thing I did ask was, and people may have seen, may not have seen, but these days I'm really conscious about going to the States and having my bag looked into for no other reason than we've heard horror stories about people who've been accused of having drugs in bags and all sorts of things. So I recently found that you can get by Hayes a smart lock luggage suitcase.
That's good to know.
So there's an app that you have on your phone and that locks and unlocks your luggage.
Yes.
But I had to get permission once again from the airline that baggage would be okay to use.
Brookie, what are the most common accessibility barriers you encounter when travelling, and how do you navigate them?
So once again, it's about speaking up. I think the common barrier that I would face with accessible travel is that people don't really understand as a whole what my needs are, and people shouldn't be expected to understand that unless I've spoken up and told and informed people what they are. So it's about educating, which I find in every aspect of my life I'm doing anyway.
Yeah.
It's about educating others, making them aware, but then showing them how to overcome that barrier so it's better for the next person who comes along.
So do you feel like the community out there, the wider community, understands your needs or
No,
respects them?
not on the whole. And I think the other thing to remember is not only are we looking at the wider community, I think if we look at Australia and what Australia's accessibility needs are and what overseas their accessibility needs are, that the definitions are actually two completely different things. And I've actually experienced that with the hotel I'm going to. So I actually had to make contact with them and make sure that I had a rolling shower. Something that I would have thought was just going to happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it wasn't until I spoke to the manager, he reassured me that he would make sure I had a rolling shower.
So is some of the language around accessibility different in different countries, have you found? So
Yes.
you might ask a question and you think that the answer is going to be something and then you find it's completely different.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to accessibility, it should be unified, but it's not.
Brookie, what essential items do you always pack to support your accessibility needs while travelling?
So the first thing I'll tell you is that packing for my accessibility needs will always make packing a really hard job, because between all the medical things and accessible things compared to my everyday clothes and the things that I want to take for comfort, it's a bit of a juggling act. So some of the things that I think about packing includes my medications. It's really, really vital that I take my meds. And I've got about 3 big bags with all my meds in their original containers, etc. And that's really important for flights, that you always pack your meds in their original boxes. Another thing that I have to take is my thermometer, something as simple as my wireless thermometer to ensure that I don't carry any temperatures, and if I do, well then we know we revert to the meds. Also have chargers. Chargers are a really big thing depending on what I have to take away. So we've got big battery chargers like that one compared to little small ones. So this is for my new wireless tracking cards, which we have discovered by doing some internet work. So one thing that would be good to know for people out there is that Apple tags were a really big thing even 6-12 months ago. And you will see I've got them on my wheelchairs and on my backpacks and all sorts of things. But due to Apple tags having batteries in them that babies tend to swallow, and they're coming out of fashion, they're now doing these tracking cards. So I'm able to put these tracking cards in my suitcase, in my backpacks, maybe even in me, who knows, we might need to track me in New York. But I need the smaller charging pod for these to be charged. So we're going to pack these. Now obviously my mobile phone that holds Google Maps and all my receipts and my dates and appointments and meetings and all sorts of things, I'm going to need a charger constantly while I'm on the go. So I've got a going away, might help if I hold it the right way, packing charger, and that will charge several items. So it'll charge my mobile phone, an iPad if I wish to take that, and a set of earpods.
Brookie, I can see in your hand that you've got a travel packing list. Is that what that is?
Absolutely. So I have a travel packing list. Some say I'm a bit anal. I say I'm a bit organised, so I don't forget anything. Obviously, with a stroke, it's quite easy to forget something when you've got brain fog or you're cognitively fatigued. So this just helps me tick off all the things as I prepare to go to New York. I'm someone who will start packing 4 weeks out, as we are discovering. So it's nice to be able to see what I still need to get over the next 4 weeks and what I've already got. What I would suggest though, packing lists are great, but it's not the only thing that can help. So I'd always suggest packing with somebody, whether that be a very kind NDIS service provider, a kind support worker, or family or friends, or maybe even a colleague every now and again, would help in packing, because they too want what's best for you, and they will think of things that maybe you haven't thought of. For I know Carol will think of things that I haven't thought of.
Yes.